tips and pointers on how to apply to schemes, and Phil and Don and I will all really take you through this. Obviously, you're going to have a written application form, and as it says here, it's all about telling stories. You've got to make sure that you can tell your story in a creative and compelling way, and we were touching on that earlier. It's about, we're going to ask you to pitch ideas. That's the same thing, isn't it, for the PCP?
Yeah.
Dom?
That's very clever, because we're taking a picture of the screen. That's a good idea.
Yes, very clever. It's all about being original. It's about having something interesting to say. If you think about your application form is among thousands of application forms. And what we can tell you is we get a lot of application forms on all our schemes that say, I'm a student, and it's a really hard life being a student, there's no jobs, and that's it. Well, we probably know that, and we feel quite sorry for you, but we don't think that's an original idea, and we don't think that's going to make a programme idea, or you're on a gap year, or something like that. You've got to think originally, and just use everything around you, as we're saying, when you're on the bus or whatever. We had a fantastic idea on the journalism trainee scheme from a woman who said she's wandering along the beach and she wondered where all the donkeys go in the winter. The donkey rides you get in the summer. So she did a bit of investigation, quite a lot of investigation. Most of them do just rest. One of them, I think, was in therapy, not in therapy, but helping someone. I don't think donkeys have therapy. Thank you for someone who got that. And one of them was in a pantomime. What a fantastic original story. Just from wandering along the beach thinking, what happens to the donkeys in the winter? And we're really looking, aren't we, for original ideas.
But at the same time, I would say, don't feel like your idea has to be really wacky necessarily either, but just something where you're taking at least an interesting angle on something.
Yes.
I think it's important to tell us about you as individuals as well, because we haven't had the opportunity to meet you, interview you, assess you yet. And as Claire said, we read through so many thousands of forms, and it's really the ones that stand out and tell us something about you as individuals that we're more inclined to put through. I would always give your examples that you put in your application form to other people to read through, and they can give you an honest critique and say, well, actually that's a bit boring, I didn't really enjoy reading that. Make it exciting, make it stand out.
I think that was a good point you made there about how we don't know you. So if your personality can come through on your application, a lot of people think that they have to write in a really formal style because it's the BBC, but you don't. It's more important to get across who you are.
We're all looking for passion. We're all looking for people who really can convince us this is what they want to do. And this is your one chance on this form to tell us. So, and as we say, do read each question carefully and make sure you understand the question. That seems incredibly obvious, but people do sometimes answer the wrong thing, so make sure you know what you're answering. Think about it carefully. Think about the best example you have that answers the question and demonstrates your ability. So don't answer another question, and don't try and blag it or pretend you've done things you haven't done. Just tell us honestly about the things that you have done. Try not to write I in all these answers. It's a little bit dull. Try and write in an interesting, expressive way. That's certainly for our scheme. Writing is a really key quality. We want you to get that over in an interesting way. You've got to say what your role was. Yes, when you answer the questions, you do want to explain what you did and how you helped that situation or drove that situation. What exactly you did in that particular example, and as it says here, you've got to tell us what makes you stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, because we one of the questions in the production talent pool application is kind of like why you. So you have to convince us why you are the right person for this. And some people feel like they don't want to be immodest and sort of say how wonderful they are, but you can tell us how wonderful you are without actually using words like that, by just being concrete and telling us exactly what things you've done. And
it's about what you can offer the BBC as well. What are you going to bring that's different to the next person. So most of the schemes will have some kind of motivation of why you want to get onto the scheme. And
we're very much not looking for the same old, same old. So whatever you've got, whatever makes you unique, whatever you think you can bring us and you can tell stories from your background, we are very, very interested in you. And it doesn't hurt to use a bit of humour. The lady over here was pitching the guinea pigs. You know, you made us laugh as well. If you can, I mean, don't try telling jokes on a form, obviously. But if you can make us laugh, I have 2 examples actually stand up of forms I read. Somebody said that, this is really exaggerating, I imagine. I woke up, my earliest memories of waking up in my cot and listening to the sounds of Big Ben chiming the 6 o'clock news on Radio 4. Really? Really? Someone else did make me laugh inadvertently, I feel, by saying the editor of the Richmond and Twickenham Times said I was the best woman he'd ever had across the desk. Anyway, I'm suggesting that you don't, if you're going to be humorous, try to be humorous in an interesting way rather than inadvertently.
And I think also be careful of the language you use and trying to come across a certain way, because we don't like a lot of jargon and gobbledygook. Just plain English would do. There was an article I tweeted once about how not to write your CV, and there was a sentence that really stood out in my mind. It said, "I was instrumental in providing exceptional refreshments." Yeah, I made tea. We don't need any of that. We can see through it. It still sounds like you're trying to cover up the fact that you didn't do very much.
Yeah. Yes. And as we said, read over your answers question. Have you answered each part of the question? So you can easily lose or gain marks just by not reading. It's like that test, isn't it? The old test, it says read every question carefully before you start, and the last question says put down your pencil and don't write everything. You know, do read all the questions really carefully. Make sure you answer each and every bit.
You have 2 weeks to do it, so you don't have to fill it in one go. You can save it and come back to it another time. I often suggest just not even filling in the answers online, but using Word, and just because it's easier to kind of chop and change things, and then you can spend the whole 2 weeks on it until they're perfect, and then stick them into the online form. But again, maybe not 2 weeks, maybe like 1 week and 4 days, because allow yourself a bit of time at the end in case there's problems. Because on the last day, we get completely inundated with people saying their internet's crashed and all that kind of stuff.
What have we had, Phil? What
can't
have been
really
the
do anything
excuses?
about it.
Dogs eaten my memory disk. House burnt down.
And what's the email address? So it's kind of
Careers at BBC
HR
direct.co.uk.
Well, a lot of this stuff is going to be on the,
Yes.
the websites, and if you're interested in the production talent pool, that'll all be going on there. So don't worry too much about scribbling all this down.
Just going back before you submit the application, spelling mistakes. Now, certainly for my scheme, most schemes, if you spell anything wrong, it really, really does not help you. If you talk about, I loved, I don't know, the 10 o'clock news, and you name a particular presenter, Fiona Bruce or anybody, and then you spell that presenter's name wrong, it's a really big mark against you. Because journalism, you've got to be able to spell properly, be grammatical. There's no kind of excuse really for not getting people's names right, I don't think. And the other thing as well, in terms of the word limits, you'd be amazed that most of our questions have 300 word limits. I had a lot of questions this time, didn't we, Phil, where people answered, put 600 words in and put brackets 299. We're not stupid. We can work out that you have written too much. And the point is quite a serious reason. We think that this can be answered properly in 300 words. And if I was to take you on the journalism trainee scheme, I need to know if I asked you to write, I don't know, the summary of the news, 2-minute news summary on Radio 2, that you could write 2 minutes and not 4. And that's not shown. If you write too much in your answers, that really goes against you. Equally,
We had a lot of applications for the production talent pool last year where we asked for 300 and they gave us like 50 words. And sometimes people think all they need to do is list all the things that they've worked on, and that speaks for itself, but it doesn't, because we want to know what you did on that production and what you got out of it, how you grew from it. And it's almost kind of arrogant to think that it's enough just to say, oh, I've done these things and I'm great.
There's an approach when you're structuring answers to questions that we're providing where we're asking for examples called the STAR approach. It's just kind of worth having that in the back of your mind when you're answering questions. It stands for describing the situation, the task you're faced with, the action that you took, and the end result. So it's about giving that structure, and it's about what you did throughout that example.
Quite a lot of people in the BBC, when they're looking at forms, do look for that, don't they? We talk about competencies that we're after. That is a bit of a jargony word that I don't like very much. But it is worth looking at those competencies that we are after and thinking, am I making sure I'm demonstrating those in all my answers?
And they're not always about creativity and using the media. You know, there's stuff that you can get from working in an office that shows that you're organised, you've managed a budget, or you can know how to use spreadsheets, and you use all the different software packages, things like that, that if you were to come into a role as a production assistant would be really beneficial.
Yes, that goes back to Chris, the trainee that we had here, doesn't it? His background as an accountant and how he was able to use that in terms of budgeting and stuff. Just think about your transferable skills. So we talked about submitting your application. So I would always set a false deadline for yourself, because we really will not accept late applications. Every year we're asked to, and we don't, not for any reason. And we even get people's parents ringing us. It's like, no, don't do this. So we won't accept a late application. So really don't put yourself in that position. And as it says here, you will receive an acknowledgement, from HR.
There's another step I should also mention for the production talent pool. You're also expected to complete a situational judgment test at the very first stage, along with the written application. And that's a multiple choice test where you're given real life situations that have been faced by people who are currently in the production talent pool. And then there's a bunch of options of how you would deal with that scenario. And we're just looking for you to kind of use your judgment and your common sense. And you can I get in the situation of overthinking these things, and I get really confused, and I kind of question my beliefs and everything. Don't do that. Just kind of go with what feels right, just using your common sense.
Yeah. So you get 4 possible responses to each scenario, and you pick the best response and then the worst response from those 4 that are given.
So then there's another stage, which is the verbal reasoning test. I might actually ask Phil to talk us through the verbal reasoning test.
Yeah, so not just the BBC, but loads and loads of organisations now are using some kind of verbal reasoning or ability test. You may have all kind of done something similar before. So the verbal reasoning test that we're kind of using for most of the schemes, and actually, it is essential to have a good level of English comprehension when you're working at the BBC in a number of different roles. Probably all roles actually. The normal sort of verbal comprehension or verbal reasoning test will be a passage of information that you read through. It's a timed test, and then you get statements after the passage, and you have to say whether the statement is true, false, or you can't say based on that information given. Not based on anything that you previously know about the subject, it's only based on that passage of information. As I said, it's all timed, you get full instructions that are sent to you kind of with the email link. There are kind of websites you can go to do practice tests, and I'd recommend that you all do that to get into the swing of it. As with any kind of online test, you need to make sure you're in the right frame of mind. You need to make sure that you're not going to be interrupted, because there's no kind of second chance to do it. You need to make sure that your internet connection's safe and isn't going to break down. Quite useful to have kind of pen and paper to hand as well, in case you want to scribble stuff down. And there are right and wrong answers to this. So you are being scored against these questions. As I said, it is timed. You have a sort of timer system on the test board. So we kind of encourage you to try and work as quickly as you can, but also obviously accuracy is very important in these tests.
Yeah.
On the verbal reasoning, is it just the top people go through to the next round, or is there just a minimum cut-off that from there?
There isn't a set kind of mark that you have to get to pass. It's based on the kind of group that we're looking for. So normally you'd be able to sort of get a score of about, which usually around the sort of 50% mark that we'd be expecting as a pass rate, but it's totally dependent on the marks of other people. So it's kind of impossible to say what the pass rate will be.
I think that's the last of our official size, just to show you the PTP, which Don will talk to you a bit more about in a moment, and perhaps talk a bit about what happens if you do get through. That's actually, applications are opening on the 18th of Feb. And then, as I think we've already mentioned, you have to be in the pool to then be able to apply for the production trainee scheme. Journalism trainee scheme opens in September. The digital graduate scheme, the applications are open now. All the schemes, there's a really good page, is on the BBC Careers website. I don't know if you're all familiar with that, but it has all the work experience, all the trainee schemes, all the jobs. You can set up job alerts, can't you, Phil? So all the information.
And Paula mentioned earlier that Aim High is going to be going live again in March. So most of the schemes have their own kind of dedicated website, which have loads of information, videos from previous trainees, kind of FAQs, that kind of thing. So actually you can find out if you're the type of person we're looking for before you even begin to apply. A couple more to add to that going live. One went live today, which is an apprenticeship scheme based at Bristol. There's quite a few different apprenticeship schemes happening across the BBC, certainly over the last 12 months and going forward. And then we've also got part of the design trainee scheme, so we're looking for user design and experience developers, which is going live on Monday. That'll be London and Salford based.
In terms of the production and talent pool, that goes live on the 18th for about 2 weeks. I think it's March the 4th of March or something like that. You've got until then to submit. And then if you get through the first part of the application, which is the form that you submit and the situational judgment test, then in March you will receive the verbal reasoning test and you'll be given a deadline to submit that. Then if you're successful in that, you'll be invited to an assessment centre. Those take place throughout the month of May, and we'll run a day or two in Belfast. And at that assessment centre, there'll be sort of two main things happening. In the morning, there'll be a group exercise where you'll be working in a group of about 8 people, and you'll be set a task to work on together. And we'll be observing you and just kind of seeing how you interact in a group to accomplish that task. We're not looking for whoever talks the most or has the most ideas. It's about how you work with others, because in the BBC, the most important thing is that when you're working in these production teams, that you can work together to come up with ideas rather than kind of like dominating or like on the opposite side of the spectrum, not saying anything. If you don't speak, we've got nothing to measure you on. I mean, it's body language as well. Like if you're sat there just kind of like this, you know, when you don't like someone else's idea, there's things like that we look at as well. So
just to make you paranoid.
But you know, people who do well in the group exercise tend to be people who kind of listen to other people's ideas and sort of encourage them and kind of develop other ideas, as well as trying to push your own ideas through. It's about listening to other people and being open to suggestions and building on suggestions that other people raise.
And very much like the pitch exercise you've just done, it's about, you know, knowledge of the BBC audiences. Where is your idea going to fit?
So that is the first part of the day. Then in the afternoon, you'll have an interview, which is more like the typical sort of formal interview, where you'll be on your own with a panel of 2 or 3 interviewers who'll be people working in production, and you'll have probably something else to another sort of ideas generation and pitching exercise that you'll have prepared kind of in between the morning group exercise and your interview. So then you'll pitch your idea at the start of the interview, and then there will be the more standard type kind of interview questions, which usually are about like, why you? Why are you the person that we should take on for this?
And I just would add 2 things there. Phil is really right. It's really important to say you've got to be familiar with our output. You've got to show that you know something about our programmes. It's not good enough just to say, I love Strictly. Why? You really need to have good knowledge of our programmes and have an idea of what you can bring. And the other thing I would say is that we do try very much to make these interviews, I mean, they're quite testing, but they're also quite informal. We want you to enjoy them and give the best of yourself. We don't try and make them intimidating. So if you just arrive and you think, I'm so nervous and everyone else is just amazing, actually everyone's really nervous and we're really aware of that. So we will do our best in all of these scheme assessments to help you bring out the best of yourself.
We have all nice interviewers working on our assessment centres. There's no
nice.
nasty people like in The Apprentice. The final interviews. I've never seen so much bullshit in my life. No, we're not going to be like that. It's like a conversation. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's a conversation because it is about, for us, it is about the potential. You know, we're bringing people in and it's all about your potential and what you can do, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's good to be, I think it's, as much as we want you to sort of be able to show your appreciation for the sort of broad range of content we have, it's also good to have ideas about what we're not doing and be able to kind of talk about audiences that maybe we're not serving so well and what we could do to address those.
And be original. So when you're doing the production talent pool and they say, who could present this? Don't say Stephen Fry or Ricky Gervais. You know, who are the people we're not featuring? Who are the young, who are people coming up? Who is someone different? You know, just think about originality. We really, really bang on about originality and that's what we're looking for. Anything else? Any other tips before we open it up to the floor?
Should we play the film? We've got a little film about the production talent pool.
Yes, would you like to see a film about the production talent pool? The answer is yes, I would.
My name's Wayne. I've been a member of the production talent pool now for 6 months. Prior to that I was working in theatre. I didn't have any experience of TV beforehand, so I realised that this was a really valuable way of making that first step, I guess, into a career in television. Well, I guess it takes no introduction, but this is the Strictly Come Dancing set. Being a runner on a programme like Strictly Come Dancing means you are surrounded by TV professionals who are experts in their field. For example, I work closely with a PD, which is a producer-director, and she's been really valuable to me in terms of showing me how to use the camera equipment, which was something that I had no idea about before I started in this role. The production talent pools really allowed me to experience lots of different genres. My first placement was working in drama up at Elstree in the casting department, so casting mainly on doctors, but also some work on EastEnders as well, which was just fantastic. And now I'm working on Strictly, so I've moved across to kind of the entertainment genre really. Working on the pool just means that you get to experience lots of different areas of TV.
My name's Farah, and before I was on the production talent pool, I was working as a freelance writer and journalist. I applied for the pool because I wanted an opportunity to get into the BBC. And it was fantastic because once I was in the pool, it allowed me the opportunity to apply to the production trainee scheme.
The production talent pool works very much like a temp agency, where we respond to business need by providing runners and production management assistants for programmes, both radio and television. There's no guarantee of work, but every placement, every role is paid work.
It gives them a springboard into the BBC to see where they'd like to work, what genres they'd like to work, networking opportunities to meet different types of people. It also trains for the industry because we quite often envisage people starting here, going out to the Indies, coming back in again.
At the moment I'm a production management assistant and it's a great role because it's very, very varied and it really depends on what you're working on, what you do. So you sometimes do things like book transport, help set up shoots, whether that's booking crew or hotels or helping with the scheduling, getting equipment for crews. Depends what you work on. Sometimes you can help on live shoots, so you can go and help with the audience or help them with filming.
Over the last year, I've placed about 10 to 12 members of the production talent pool, and they have gained a great deal of experience and are just loving being in the industry. And some of them are working from project to project and experiencing the whole different parts of the BBC, and they're just so keen and eager to learn. So they are fulfilling a job description for me, but they're also getting so much out of working here. To do well on this scheme, I think you need to be hardworking, part of your team, good team workers, proactive, attention to detail, but most of all, I would say you need to be passionate to work in this business.
I've had such a varied mix of different things to work on, a lot of support from the talent managers and other people in the pool as well, and lots of training too. So I've been able to learn a lot of new things and have the opportunity to learn things that I might not have been able to if I wasn't in the pool.
Every placement, every role is paid work. We also, for everybody that gets through to the production talent pool, offer them BBC mandatory training around personal effectiveness, so making sure that they are employable and marketable. And we also hold regular networking events as well, just to make sure that the production talent pool are seeing the right people and that their names are out there.
I'm currently editing some clips for some CBBC online content. They're making a number of games based on some series, and because I'd met a few people in that team whilst I was on another placement, I happened to just mention that I know how to edit in Avid, which is the main editing package that they use, and I also have experience using After Effects, which is sort of a special effects compositing package. So I mentioned those skills, and they happened to be looking for someone to come in and edit those clips and key out the green screen. So I just happened to have an opportune moment there to sell myself, and I managed to get a week doing that.
My advice for people who want to apply for the production talent pool is to just absolutely go for it. It's a really great opportunity to get into television and to meet new people and to sort of get your first steps in the door.
The members are better equipped to decide what they want to do with their career. They've got contacts, they've got all the different job roles that they can choose from. And on the flip side, what the BBC gets is somebody who's up and running, ready to go, and able to be placed on productions in one of the roles that they'd like to do.
So hopefully that's answered a few of your questions, but we're very happy to open the floor and take any more that you might have for any of us.
Sorry, one thing I should mention is that Wayne, the first guy that was on there, he's one of our most successful people in the pool, and I interviewed him at the assessment centre. He switched careers and sort of applied for the pool in his 30s with no prior experience in the industry, but what he was able to demonstrate was that he had a story to tell. He worked with young people from difficult situations, and he showed us that he had real passion for what he was doing, but he had a really strong interest in media and strong awareness, and so you don't need to, he didn't study media either, so you don't need to come from that background.
Okay, has anyone got anything else they would like to ask us? And I won't forget, actually, just while I remember, because Kieran here is telling me about the CSV scheme, which is something else you can apply for, and I said I'd just ask him to stand up and just tell you all about that if you haven't heard of that. It's just another opportunity.
Okay. In Northern Ireland...
Do you need, look, there's a little mic there.
Oh, right. In Northern Ireland and across the rest of the UK, there's a charity which operates called CSV. You may have heard of it. It stands for Community Service Volunteers, and they run training schemes. Now they run one inside here in this building in BBC Northern Ireland, and it's a 6-month scheme. There's 3 months of education, and you get a certificate at the end of it from City and Guilds. It's, I think, journalism and media techniques or something like that. But really, the point of it is that you get the placement at the end of it, and you get your placement across the road at the BBC or in here, obviously. And there's loads of departments that open up for it. I think a colossal amount of people who work in BBC Northern Ireland have come in through CSV. It's like Joe Lindsay came in, local broadcasters have come in through it. Do we have Philly Tired, who's just got a slot in Radio 1? He came in through CSV. Colossal amount. It's a really good opportunity. It exists across the UK, but it's by far more effective in Northern Ireland because it attracts funding from the government here. It's one of the government's key schemes at getting people into employment. The criteria for it is that at the beginning you have to be claiming job seekers allowance, but the way it's set up at the minute, I know it's different in the UK at the minute with the work programme, but the way it's set up in the UK or in Northern Ireland at the minute is that you can walk in to your job centre and obviously be unemployed and sign on and say, listen, I want to do this, and they're delighted for you to do that, and you apply to get on it. They hold interviews here. I think they had about 120 applications going for about 12 places. There will be 3 more intakes before there's a big structural change in these sort of training schemes in Northern Ireland. So if anyone's interested in that, watch out in your papers for it, or Google CSV Northern Ireland and just keep an eye out for when they'll be doing another intake. But it will be advertised in papers, and there's another intake due, I think, at the end of this month, at the beginning of March perhaps. But it's just something to be aware of. Northern Ireland's got actually a lot of the CSV people have gone on to the production trainee scheme as well, and on to IMHI. So it's something to bear in mind. If anyone has any questions, like grab me at the end of this, I'm on it right now. I should have started by saying that.
Yeah.
I'm on this scheme
They're all
right
thinking,
now.
who is this man? Yeah.
I should have started by saying that I'm actually on this right now, and it's fantastic. It's a really good scheme. So any questions, come to me at the end, and that's me.
Thank you very much. We
Thank
just thought it'd
you.
be useful for you to hear about that. So, back to any questions. There's a roving mic, if anyone wants to grab a mic. Anyone with anything to ask? Oh, right over here. We could do a sort of relay. Ruth will do this side of the room.
Yeah, sorry, I was just wondering at what point the situational judgment test comes in the application process. Do you need to be ready to submit the written piece before you do that, or?
So it comes before the.
It comes before the.
Yeah. So when you go on, when you see the advert, you've clicked in through the website. You'll answer some screening questions. So these things like, have you got the right to work? Can you come to the assessment centres, which are going to take place in May? So these are going to be yes and no, kick-out questions, killer questions. And then there'll be some things like, which location do you want to work in? And then you'll come across 8 scenario-based questions. So there'll be an example question, and then the 8 questions that you'll need to answer. Once you've finished that, you then move on to the... you can drop out at that stage. If you kind of go through the questions and you think, well, actually, I'm not really interested anymore because these scenarios are not really the positions I want to be in. But yeah, if you complete those and then you go on to the actual...
you have to go directly
Yes.
onto the written one, so you have to be ready to submit the written one after.
No, not submit. So you can do the first part as soon as the job opens.
Okay.
It's the kind of first part of the application, if you like. And then you'll be confronted by 4 or 5 written application questions.
Okay, and then you can submit those at a later stage.
Yeah, well, you've got 2 weeks to do the whole
Yeah,
lot.
I know, it's before the closing date. Okay, that's brilliant, thank you.
Don't be off-put by that test as well, because the scenarios are 8 difficult scenarios that we're faced, but they're not like the kind of thing that happens every single day, because you think, oh my god, this work is so stressful after you get through those 8 scenarios. Like serious dilemmas where you've got to think on your toes and your decision affects the rest of the team. But that's the key, is to think about the impact of whatever choice you make on the other people that you're working with.
Mine was sort of a bit weird, but if you do get on the scheme and say you're told, right, you're moving to Manchester next month, is there any sort of guidance for where to stay, or is it just a case of go forth, find somewhere to live, stay
It's
there?
kind of 2 different, I guess, if we talk about, are you talking about journalism or production?
Either, probably production, but either.
I'll start talking by talking about the production, and then you can talk. Okay, so in the production talent pool, and now this is where we take on 100 or so people, and then you can specify where you'd like to work. So generally you would specify your home base, where you live, because it's not about where you would love to work in an ideal world, but where you can realistically work, where you've got accommodation. So most of you will probably choose Belfast. And we're not going to expect you to go anywhere else. It's just that when opportunities come up in Belfast, then people will dip into the pool of people who are in Belfast and look at your CVs and then contact you for those roles. When you get onto the production trainee scheme, which will be about 12 people through that second application process, then that requires you to go wherever the placement is. And so typically there'll be 1 or 2 placements in London and then a couple of placements in other parts of the country. And that is an expectation on people who apply for the scheme, that they are prepared to relocate.
And with ours, we have sort of 12 places a year, and you could be sent anywhere in the UK. So in the interview, we say, where, if you could choose, would you like to be? And you can't choose. But we try and take those preferences into account. We also think about what suits the business, where you might fit. I mean, I have had situations, I ring someone and say, great news, you're on the trainee scheme. And they go, woo woo. And I say, I'm sending you to Norwich. And they go, no. And actually, that's a true story. And the guy who went to Norwich had a fantastic time. And you have to be really open-minded. We don't actually in the BBC, so in the journalism trainee scheme, you get a year's salary. We don't actually fund you or help you find accommodation. We can sort of unofficially, there's quite a network of previous trainees and all the schemes who'll say, oh, you know, I know somewhere, I've got somewhere, whatever, but we can't actually do anything more than that because we're paying you a salary, and we hope that that helps. But the more open-minded you can be, certainly for us, the better. It's a kind of like, it's kind of like, you know, everyone says, I want to be in London, and we get a lot of that. You know, well, it's not. You're not really doing yourself any favours there.
I've found that we have some serial landlords who kind of take on trainees one after another because they're so used to BBC people coming in and out. So we have them in Facebook, actually.
Yes.
It's basically about the journalism trainee scheme, so it'll probably be directed towards yourself.
Yes.
Whenever you're applying, you're asked, do you want to apply for the sports role?
Yes.
And that obviously opens up an extra position to you. So although that's opening up an extra opportunity for you, if you say no, does that go against you?
No, people often ask us this. So we have a sports role, we have a political role. It doesn't go against you or for you if you opt for all three or you don't. What happens is that we will look at your application and we'll say, should we consider them for sport? Should we consider them for general? Should we consider them for political? Should we consider them for all three? And in fact, occasionally, you know, we would think someone's more suitable for a role, perhaps they haven't ticked, but it doesn't go against you or for you if you opt for those particular roles.
I think we changed the wording slightly this year to say, you know, please indicate your preference, or if you're interested, but it won't discount you from the more general scheme.
I should also talk about that in terms of the production talent pool as well, where you will ask you at the beginning what your interests are, and you can tick off, there's like boxes for the different genres, and so you could express what genre you want to work in, but you have to sort of bear in mind that different BBC bases kind of sort of have specialisms. So like there's a lot of entertainment stuff in London, Strictly, and then a lot of drama in Cardiff, and so you have to sort of bear that in mind. And so however you answer that question, that kind of goes into a database, and then when talent managers are looking for someone to fill a particular role, they'll see who's interested in that area. However, there are some people who kind of don't really know what they want to do, and they want to just kind of explore everything, and so you can say you're interested in all genres, and then that kind of makes it so that people will consider you for all sorts of things. So there's kind of an advantage both ways, because if they want someone who is really just factual or like really newsy or whatever, then if you express that, then a talent manager is quite likely to just go to you, but then you're ruling out other options possibly.
Oh yeah.
Hey, I noticed earlier on the first video there was a scheme called the Writing Academy. Is that something to do with the production talent scheme, or is that a whole separate scheme altogether?
The Writers Academy.
The Writers Academy, actually, I just noticed that we're not running it yet. Again, no, I just saw a story about this yesterday on the BBC, that it's separate to what we do, and it has developed lots of script writers. People have come through it and gone on to EastEnders and Casualty. And the guy who set it up and ran it is leaving the BBC, and so they announced yesterday that until they find the right person to run it, because it was so much his baby, they're going to rest it. They're going to arrest it.
There is something called the BBC Writers' Room, though, and they're on Twitter. And so anyone who's interested in getting into writing should follow them on Twitter. And they just take unsolicited scripts from anybody, and they will read them. And so it's a really amazing opportunity to get your script read.
For example, do you try and take a variety of people from the different bases, or is it just all in, is there going to be a quota of, say, 8 or 10 based in Belfast, or is it just all in one big group?
There's a certain allocation of spaces for each base, and that's kind of dependent on the sort of level of production needs in that area. So yeah, it's not like fixed in stone, we will only take 8 people in Belfast, and it's kind of, we'll see who applies and how good they are, and then we'll kind of like make sure we get enough people, and maybe we could take a few more than we had hoped, or if there aren't enough then we'll take less, but I'm sure there'll be enough, more than enough.
We don't want people sitting in the pool who aren't getting offers of work. So, you know, we'd rather take on 5 people in Belfast and get everybody out to work rather than take on 10 and half people sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah.
In regards to the journalism scheme, is it suitable for students at all? Is it still at university?
We're not looking for people straight out of university. We are looking for people who've got some life experience, some work experience, generally some journalism, you know, some kind of writing. So we're really not looking to recruit so you finish your degree and you come straight onto our scheme. That's not what we're looking for. I mean, we do get people sometimes who have perhaps not long been out of uni, and that's probably where they've done a massive amount of stuff outside. You know, there's someone who approached Phil and I at a recent event we did, who's set up a student newspaper at her uni in Glamorgan, and you think, well, that's really showing some enterprise. And you know, she hasn't applied yet because she's still at uni, but it's things like that will probably stand out on her application form. You know, generally, it's if you need to be showing that you're doing a lot of journalism while you're at uni, and then you need to be doing a little bit more to broaden your experience. We do like people with a bit of life experience as well. Not that we're saying that being a student isn't a very interesting experience, an expensive experience now.
I get asked this same question a lot about production talent pool as well. You know, can you use it like as a sandwich placement? But I say, don't apply for it if you're like first, second year or whatever. Just you should be able to work for that whole year, because you only get one opportunity to be in the pool. I mean, you can apply as many times as you want if you don't get in, but you've got one opportunity to be in the pool for that 12 months. So it just doesn't make sense to use that when you're still in education. There are work experience opportunities available if you're looking for that kind of thing. We did have one person who was in uni, got into the production trainee scheme and dropped her degree, and she's actually gone on to win an Emmy. So it was like a really good choice for her, but it's a risk you take because there's no guarantee that you're going to get consistent work, and so you're best to wait till you're in that sort of place where you can take on whatever is offered.
Yeah, just another question about the technical stuff and the background there. I was wondering as well, I have a lot of broadcast experience. Do you have any schemes like that where it could get you into broadcasting, like radio or stuff like that?
Well, you can still apply for PTP, can't you?
Yeah, because like when you get into the production talent pool, it kind of just opens up the whole BBC to you, basically. Although the roles that you're eligible for within the pool are as runners or production assistants, it's about just getting into the BBC, taking on those entry-level roles, which, to be honest, the BBC is a very hierarchical place, and people are kind of expected to start off at the bottom. Even if before coming into the BBC you were a self-shooter, producer, director, or whatever, you're still expected to start at the bottom of the BBC. But then once you get that first role, talk to people. You'd be amazed at the number of people you could sort of strike a conversation with in the kitchen while you're making tea, who are looking for someone to do something that you want to do. And so it's about meeting people, letting them know what your interests are, what you're capable of, and having chats with people and meeting over coffee to talk about what you can do. So the networking part of being in the pool is just as valuable as the actual work.
And also then you probably have extra qualifications you'd be bringing in to help you apply for the production trainee scheme, wouldn't you? To take it to the next level.
And also while you're in the pool, you are eligible to apply for internal vacancies. So vacancies that are advertised just to BBC staff, and a lot of stuff doesn't actually get outside the BBC. So you don't just have to, you're not just limited to waiting around for offers that come through the pool. You can search through the internal vacancies site and apply for things that could be something beyond what is offered in the pool, like a researcher role or something like that, because that's kind of not considered an entry-level role in the BBC, but you could apply for one. If you've got, especially if you have specialist knowledge in that area.
And someone behind you wanted that.
I have a good question. When you're in the production talent pool, are you very much you are in the production talent pool in the city that you're in? You can't flip between different areas. So if you are very able to flip between Belfast or London or Glasgow,
You can.
Okay, so you get roles coming up and you sort of apply for what you feel you're able
Well,
to do for, or
it's a bit complicated because you have to tell us where you're based and where you're able to work as your primary choice, and then as roles come up in that area, you're among the pool of people that they would go to for that. So if there's opportunities outside your area, they're more likely to look for someone who's expressed that place as their first preference. However, it's about talking to people and letting them know. Once you're in the pool, you can contact talent managers and say, although my first choice was Belfast, I can easily work in London, I've got family there, and so if something comes up, please consider me. So you can, like while you're in the pool, network with people and let them know what you're able to do if it's beyond your normal base.
And did you say the intake for the pool is generally around 100 people?
Yeah, last year we took on 120, but this year I think it's going to be about 100.
I have another question.
Greedy.
If it comes back to you, you can ask.
I'm seeing a few droopy eyes and yawns, so we'll take just a couple more questions. I'm very good at spotting the yawners. Oh, there's one round there.
Oh, well, okay. Just if you're in the production pool, obviously you might be waiting a while before something comes up. Do you get much notice, or should you be kind of on call to drop everything and start the following Monday? You know,
there's like no real rhyme or reason to it, because a lot of the opportunities that come up are very short notice, and they need a runner tomorrow. And then there's other people. There's one guy who, as soon as he joined the pool, he was given a 12-month contract on Panorama. And so it really depends on production needs. And so some people are already in work when they join the pool, and they don't want to give up their job and sit around by the phone waiting for that call that doesn't necessarily come. So it's you can stay at what you're doing as long as you've got an arrangement where you could give like maybe a week's notice, and then if something that's worth leaving your job for comes up, then take it. But if it's just like short runner stints and you're giving up a lot by freeing yourself up for that, then it's something you have to think carefully about for yourself.
I think as long as you're open with us and realistic about what you can do and when, then opportunities will come your way. But if you can't, start a job at the drop of a hat, then you need to kind of tell us that and say, right, I need a week's notice, and we can kind of bear that in mind when we get placements.
We have some people who come from teaching, and they do supply teaching in between taking on contracts, so they kind of just make it work by juggling things around.
We had one of your trainees was talking about doing bar work, or doing shift works, where you can just. It is about juggling it, because obviously we understand you need to fund yourselves.
And Dachi, who was on the panel from the production trainee scheme, when she applied for the pool, she already had work in Radio Norfolk, which we still took her on because she ultimately wanted to get into the production trainee scheme, but she stayed at Radio Norfolk and didn't take on any work in the pool. And then when the applications for the production trainee scheme came along, she applied, she got in, and then she...
Any more? Yes.
I noticed a few of the people in the video at the start were working as script assistants or script editors, and just if your interest lies in writing for television, I assume they were through the production talent pool as well.
That would have been the trainee scheme, because the production trainee scheme is like a fast track traineeship that takes you from that entry level and like just races you up to whether depending what you're interested in, whether researcher or assistant producer or script editor, we'll kind of see what your interests are. Sophie Petzel, who is the person I was talking about who gave up uni and won an Emmy, she's script editor for E20. Is it called E20? EastEnders offshoot. Yeah. And so that can come about through the production trainee scheme, but not the production talent pool, which is basically just runner and production management assistant, entry level type roles.
Yeah, one of the production trainees from a couple of years ago, a guy called Jack, he was a massive Doctor Who nerd. Like, he knew everything about the whole history of Doctor Who, so obviously that was his real passion. And eventually after he finished, he got his dream job as an assistant script editor on Doctor Who.
Every year we get a Doctor Who nerd. This year we had a really hardcore Doctor Who nerd who she's working in the pool on Doctor Who, and they love her because she knows every single monster they've ever had in Doctor Who. And
do we have any here? Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let them know that when you're applying.
Right, we'll take a couple more questions and then we'll wind up. So if there's any more, there's one here.
There's a lot of talk about television. I'm myself more interested in the radio end of things.
Good.
Is there a lot of opportunities because with radio just like 2 people to make a show, whereas with television there's 20. Like, is there much opportunity in the talent pool for radio heads like myself?
Yeah. Well, when you apply to the pool, you can specify whether you want to work in radio or television, or you don't mind, and you'll be up for doing either. There have been quite a few really good radio roles that have come up. The work in radio is production management assistant roles through the pool. And yeah, lots of our talent poolers have gotten into those roles, and quite a few of them doing exactly what they always dreamed of doing. I'd say there are fewer roles in radio than in television, and it's kind of something to do with what's happening in the industry right now, and the turnover isn't as high, there's not as many people leaving, and so I think if you're willing to do both, you're more likely to get work offers if you're open-minded to doing radio and television. But having said that, lots of people have decided all they want is radio, and they've managed to get radio roles.
Just when that gentleman asks about radio, what about film, like feature in BBC? Is that going down the scheme? Is that a way into film as well? Because I come from a film background as well.
BBC Films isn't part of the pool, but someone in the trainee scheme, in our production trainee scheme, has got a role. They've got a placement in Doctor Who film. So yeah, it's not really part of the process though.
Okay, I think that's it for the questions. I just want to thank you all very much. Before we finish, I just would like to know, a show of hands, how many people are thinking of applying to the PTP? Good. Any journalism trainee schemes? Good. Try again. Okay, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I hope it's been useful and you just found a bit more about getting into the industry. I'd like to thank our technical crew at the back there very much. Thank you all for coming.
Tweet us at BBC Trainees if you have any questions along the way about any of this.
Thank you.